Mike was never the kind of man who needed much. He liked his routines, his quiet life, the comfort of knowing exactly where he stood with the woman he loved. He and Maya had built a life together over 3 years. Inside jokes that had long since stopped needing words, Friday night pizza, a shared Spotify playlist filled with songs neither of them could remember adding. They weren't perfect, but they were solid. Stable. At least, that's what he thought. Then, a month ago, Maya sat him down. She even made tea first, like she was trying to soften the air between them before she spoke. She told him she'd been thinking about polyamory. She said it wasn't about cheating, not about wanting less of him, just that she'd been reading, watching, listening to people talk about how open relationships made couples stronger. How they built trust, gave people space to grow. "It's not like I've done anything," she said quickly, watching him, measuring his silence. "I just don't want to feel guilty if I'm being honest about my needs." That line sat heavy in his chest. Not so we can grow together. Not so we'll be stronger. Just so I don't feel guilty anymore. He didn't fight. He didn't yell. He just sat there, hands wrapped around a cup of tea he didn't want, trying to figure out if the ground had always been this unsteady beneath his feet. He told her he wasn't wired that way, that he didn't know how to love someone while leaving the door open for someone else to step in. Maya nodded, said she understood, said it didn't mean she loved him any less, that they didn't have to do anything right away. It was just a conversation. But after that, something shifted. She started sleeping with her phone under her pillow. Started going out more. First, it was co-workers, then friends, then just vague I need to get out of the house nights. She got distant. Tired. Less physical, less talkative. When he'd ask how her day was, she'd sigh and say, "Can we not do this right now?" So he didn't push. He just watched. He hadn't said yes to the conversation. He hadn't said no either. He'd said nothing. And sometimes silence is worse than a fight, because silence is where people get sloppy. It was a Wednesday. He usually worked late, a standing call with a West Coast client that Maya knew about. But that night, the meeting got canceled. He didn't text her, didn't call, just picked up takeout and headed home, thinking maybe they'd watch something together. Maybe they'd talk. The house was quiet when he walked in. Nothing strange about that. She wore headphones a lot. He set the food on the counter, dropped his keys into the dish by the door. Then he heard it. A laugh. Low. Male. Comfortable. Like this wasn't the first time he'd been here. Then Maya's voice. Casual. Unhurried. "Don't worry, he won't do anything." Not whispered. Not panicked. Just said, like Mike was a detail she didn't respect. A punchline to a joke she'd already told. He didn't freeze. Didn't storm upstairs. He just moved step by step, hands steady, heartbeat quiet. He walked up to the bedroom. The door was open. Maya was in bed, sheets barely covering her, staring at him the second he stepped into view. The man beside her? Mike didn't even register his face. He just looked at her. She didn't gasp. Didn't apologize. Didn't scramble for an explanation. She just stared back at him, like she couldn't believe he had the nerve to come home. Mike held her gaze for 2 full seconds. Then he turned around, walked out, and closed the door behind him. Not a slam. Not a stomp. Just quiet. He left the food on the counter. Grabbed his keys. Got in the car. Drove. 23 minutes later, Maya called for the first time. Then again. Then again. He didn't answer. Because when someone says they want honesty and you find them lying in your bed with someone else, you don't owe them closure. You owe yourself peace. The hotel was the kind of place built for transients, business travelers, the newly divorced, people in need of a bed and nothing more. Blackout curtains, thin walls, a front desk that didn't ask questions if you checked in looking hollow. It was perfect. The second I stepped into the room, I shut my phone off completely. Not silent off. I wanted space. Not just from her, but from the part of me still trying to rationalize any of it. By morning, my phone, when I finally powered it on, was a graveyard of missed calls. 12 at first. For voicemails. A string of texts that started with please and ended with you're being dramatic. She still thought she was in control. I didn't respond. Just drove to work like it was any other day. Logged in. Answered emails. Ate lunch at my desk. If anyone noticed anything off, they didn't say a word. My body moved through the motions, my brain already 4 steps ahead. That night, I crashed at my cousin's place. Told him just enough to explain why I might need the guest room for a few days. He didn't pry. Just handed me a spare towel and asked if I wanted pizza. I said yeah. While the pizza baked, I logged into the accounts Maya and I had once shared. Ones she'd long since forgotten were still synced. Calendar. Spotify. Even an old food delivery login. That's when I saw it. A Venmo payment. 2 weeks before the conversation. $38. Uber to yours. I stared at the screen, then took a slow breath before tapping into her location history. She still hadn't unlinked it. 2 Thursdays before her big polyamory talk, she'd spent the night in a neighborhood she'd never once mentioned. A different apartment complex entirely. I checked our texts from that night. She told me she was home early. Just tired. Said she'd order Thai and go to bed. She was already with him. The conversation about polyamory wasn't a discussion. It was damage control. She'd already made the choice, acted on it, and needed a way to file it under something progressive and clean. I didn't text her. I didn't call. I forwarded the Venmo screenshot to one person, her mother. No message. No context. Just the receipt. Then I deleted the thread and closed the app. I didn't care about her mother's reply. I just wanted Maya to know the story she was about to spin wasn't going to land. Not this time. That night, I sat on my cousin's couch, logged into our shared cloud storage, and downloaded everything: photos, files, receipts. I backed it all up to a drive, then systematically disconnected myself from every joint subscription, every linked account. I scheduled my name's removal from the lease, booked a moving company, and redirected my mail. By the third day, my phone had 48 missed calls. Some came like clockwork, every 10 minutes. Others in frantic, rapid bursts. Her voicemails shifted by the hour. Mike, just talk to me. I didn't cheat. You left. We were supposed to have an honest relationship. You're ghosting me like I did something wrong. That's the thing about people like her. They think if they name it something nice, poly, growth, freedom, then it doesn't count as betrayal. She didn't want honesty. She wanted permission. Too bad she picked the wrong guy to play along. By the 5th day, my unread messages outnumbered my hours slept that week. She was relentless: calls, texts, voicemails, Instagram DMs. She even emailed me. Subject line: at least let me explain. Explain what? That she framed cheating as growth? That she rehearsed her whole polyamory speech while texting another man goodnight? That she knew exactly what she was doing when she said, "Don't worry, he won't do anything"? No, I didn't block her. Blocking would have given her something to react to. Instead, I let her talk to herself. Her voicemails went from desperate to manipulative to pathetic. I didn't plan this. It just happened. You never said we were exclusive forever. I was honest. I told you how I felt. You just left. Who does that? Who does that? Someone who respects himself. Someone who knows silence can be louder than screaming. I sent her one message. Just one. Subject: let's be honest. Body: you didn't want poly. You wanted permission to cheat without consequences. You said I wouldn't do anything. You were half right. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just walked. You made your choice before you even told me. I just confirmed it. Then I waited exactly 60 seconds and muted the thread. Not blocked. Muted. So she could keep talking while I moved on. That night, I finished unpacking in my new place. Clean walls. Clean fridge. No shared Spotify. No vague guilt. No forced conversations about boundaries she had already crossed. Just space. I poured a drink. Sat on the couch. Scrolled through my call log one last time. 48 missed calls. Not a single one answered.